Welcome back to another video. Today, we're going to be doing a mashup style challenge. I'm going to be taking Mario and bringing him into the Overwatch world as a brand new hero. So, let's get started. Starting off with the design of this character, it took a lot of research to make sure that most of the Mario design from his Nintendo appearances and the style of futuristic fantasy that Overwatch characters tend to have in their outfits and weaponry shone through in equal amounts. I looked through Overwatch characters to try and get an idea of where they implemented things like leather, street clothing, jackets, hats, and more futuristic things like energy sources and mechanical prosthetics. I knew I needed to make Mario a little bit more realistic, so I gave him a more portly, tall, man-sized body, and I ended up giving him a more engineer type of aesthetic instead of a plumber. I felt like giving him an engineer look would have him fit well into some sort of story, and having him be an engineer gave me a reason for him to have his fire abilities. Aside from it being a more magical thing, having the fire flower, I ended up having him be an engineer who made these fire shooting gauntlets to protect his city in Italy. I also gave him prosthetic legs that shoot his high energy fire blast so he can do his super jump as well. And it was pretty tough getting the mechanical parts down. I'm not very used to drawing things like robots and machinery, so I had to do a lot of research from characters like Torbjorn especially, who have mechs, and a lot of the Omnics to kind of get an idea of how to make these designs consistent with each other. I wanted to make sure that the gauntlets and the boots looked like they were from the same set of things made by the same person. So I tried to make sure I had vents of the same kind, panels, tubes, and coils. Onto his face, I ended up giving Mario a hat that's actually more reminiscent of what a plumber would wear. I took a little more inspiration from the Super Mario Bros. Movie, and I looked up some references of what plumbers wear for hats. Just a little thing to kind of make it a little bit more realistic again. And overall, I felt like he had a very good mix of street clothing and futuristic fantasy mechanical gear. Moving on to inking, it was important not to make my lines too thick so I can get more of the realistic vibe for this Mario, which is why I also created this on a very large 4000 by 2250 pixel canvas, as opposed to working in my typical 1280 by 720, just to make sure that the lines I had weren't too pixelated the closer you got up. This was a great time for me to fix some of the design that I already set down, like the overalls. I really wanted to make sure that the overalls were apparent in some way, whether I put them in completely or made an allusion to them through the design of what I ended up going with, which was the jacket that goes over the sort of armor that Mario wears. I also gave Mario wonderful little Bob-omb bombs from the classic games and made him more of a grenade type thing that he can throw. Inking up the gauntlets was a little difficult. I wanted to make sure that everything was precise, so I tried to get nice guidelines, and I rearranged pieces that I had drawn just so everything looked like it was made by a machine. I gave him a little exhaust on his fists. Since fire will be coming out of his hands, I wanted to make vents that kind of filtered out a lot of the heat, so you can see it along the wrist and along the back of the hand, and also on the feet, which you'll see later. The shoes also have little vents to let out heat and exhaust. Originally I was giving Mario's gauntlets more of a brass knuckles type vibe, but I decided since his hands were going to be prosthetics already, they were going to be hard enough. So I just gave him more robotic looking knuckles, and I made the fingers have little light sources around them, which will make more sense once you actually see the coloring part. After cleaning up the gauntlets, I gave Mario a heavy duty belt where he can hold some of his Bob-omb grenades that I had mentioned earlier. It's always fun to throw in cool things like that. I also threw in some references from the old Mario Bros. Movie with his boots. I really wanted to find a way to make the jump mechanic into the Overwatch version of Mario, so I gave him boots that were very reminiscent of the jump boots that Mario and Luigi both wear in that movie. If you're too young to remember that movie, it was I think, the first live-action Nintendo movie, and it was bad. Also, the boots were pretty hard to ink. I had to be very precise with what I was doing, and because the design sketch I had under it wasn't super exact, I had to retouch up a lot of the parts of the design just to make sure that everything fit together. And I don't know about other people, but I have a hard time drawing shoes. Shoes are kind of difficult to get in perspective, and making machines, which I'm already not good at, into shoes and then drawing them into perspective, it was pretty difficult. So I took a long time making the shoes, which is why I'm kind of cutting up a lot of these bits of video. Finally, I added some more vent type things and light sources just to make the whole design a little more cohesive, and yeah. So, moving into coloring, I actually prepared a whole separate action pose just so we could have something a little more dynamic to color and beef up. So with this, I wanted to make sure that I hit the main parts of Mario's original design, which were the brown boots, the white gloves, the red shirt, hat, and the blue overalls. So you can kind of see over to the side, I already have a finished coloring of the first stance, and I just used that as a base to color a little bit faster. I wanted to make sure Mario looked a little bit aged up. I mean, in the games, he doesn't really have a noticeable age, but I would assume he's somewhere in his like mid-30s or something, just to guess. So I gave him a little bit of the salt and pepper kind of look on his hair, and a little bit of wrinkles and baggage on his face. I do feel like the blue overall jacket sort of look was a pretty good way to allude to the overalls that Mario wears. I was gonna originally give him overalls, but I just felt like it didn't really work for a character who was supposed to be out fighting. And here we are back at the boots. It was a little easier than designing them to color them, but they were just so detailed. There were so many parts of it that it took a lot longer to color these than it took for coloring, say, the gloves or the jacket. So if there's anything I took away from this, it's that shoes are hard. Or I'm just bad at shoes. Maybe that's what I learned. I wanted to give a sense of energy and power, so inspired by some characters like Torbjorn, Genji, Tracer, McCree, I gave Mario some glowing heat vents, some energy ports, some lights, just places on his outfit that showed that there was energy flowing from the gauntlets and through his suit. To give reference to Mario's signature white gloves, I made sure that the hands on the gauntlet were prosthetics so that I could have them be white, because I felt like putting cloth near fire might have been a little irresponsible for someone who's actually an engineer. And giving him prosthetic hands just made him feel more like he was a part of the Overwatch universe, where people have robotic prosthetics every now and then. This part was probably one of my favorite parts to do. I really like adding glowing effects to things, and I was going to use fire, but it was really time consuming to do this already, and I wanted to make sure that I had something I felt really confident about, and I am not yet all that confident with fire. But I really do like how everything kind of glows and stuff, and I wanted to throw in some like charcoaly smears on his body and face, showing that, you know, he works with machinery all the time. Like, he gets exhaust in his face. I don't know, it was just kind of a little character thing I just thought would kind of add to his design instead of just having him be completely clean. And finally, I had gone with some shading after I got that really intense light. I started off with more of a blue color first, but then I went back and made a lot of it more of a red shadowy bit. And for anyone who does art who's watching this, I used an overlay. I recently started using overlays a lot more. It just makes things a lot more streamlined, and I really like the effect it can give. And there we have it, Mario as an Overwatch character. I imagine Mario's story in Overwatch would be something like he was a renowned engineer in a city in Italy until the Omnic crisis erupted and he had to act. So him, maybe even his brother Luigi, worked together to build machinery and weaponry to combat the Omnics. This is dumb, but cool, and I really like how it came out. I think once it's all put together, it looks pretty dang fun. And I wouldn't be too surprised if I saw this in Overwatch. You know, it looks like it could fit in. Thank you guys for watching this video. I had a lot of fun making this, and I hope you had fun watching it. If you want to see more videos like this, then subscribe and be sure to hit that bell icon so you don't miss videos in the future. If you want to check out more of my art, you can check out my Instagram or my commission website. The links are down below. Comment down below if you think that I did an okay job at it, if you think I missed something in my design, or if you have ideas for another design I can do. Otherwise, I'll see you later.